up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Inside the Vinyl. I'm your host, Tim Bianconi. If you would go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel below, that would be greatly appreciated. If you could also hit that notification bell so you can be notified when we put out new content, that would be appreciated also. So, another in my Lost Classic series, and part 3 of Alice Cooper's Blackout Album series, and this time we are going to focus on the 1983 album Dada. All right, so a little context on this. Like I said, this is the third and final of the Blackout albums. This was released on September 28th, 1983 in the United States. It is on the Warner Brothers label. It was produced by Bob Ezrin. Bob Ezrin, who produced most of the bigger, more well-known content from the 70s, was back to produce this one. Again, like Zipper Catches Skin, this album did not chart on the Billboard charts, and there is no gold or platinum certifications for this album, unfortunately. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So obviously very Salvador Dali influenced album on the album cover. There's the album cover. And then on the back, well, it looks like we just have the lyrics. And you won't believe how long or how hard, or how long it took me to find a copy of this record. I looked everywhere, and even like on eBay and stuff, everything was just way more than I wanted to pay for it. And then finally at one of the sort of local record stores here, it's a little bit out of town, but I went out there and for the first time, and within moments had found this, and I was so excited. It totally made the trip worthwhile. And then the fucked up part is that ever since I picked up this one, which this one is beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful, pristine. The only drawback might be the cutout bin cut thing over here, but that's not the record store's fault. But I've seen it like 3 other times since then. It's one of those things like I can't find it when I'm looking for it, but as soon as I find it, all of a sudden they're everywhere. But again, none of the other ones I've found are anywhere near as nice as this one. So thank you, Bearded Vinyl, up in Glen St. Mary, Florida. So, but yeah. So let's go ahead and see. I don't think, again, much like the other two, this one, and this one doesn't even have the Warner Brothers logo on the inside plastic sleeve. And I don't know for sure if that's, if this is like original to it or whatever. But anyway, nothing too exciting inside. Again, just another record with a standard Warner Brothers sticker in the middle with the track listing. So again, nothing too special about that. But it is nice packaging, and again, this is a really, really nice copy of this. So, like I said, this is, like I've said probably 10 times now, this is the third and final of the Blackout albums. Again, the albums that he recorded in the early 80s when he had gotten back into substance abuse. He was drinking again, as well as using smoking freebase, the precursor to crack or whatever at this point. It says, he knows he recorded them and toured them or whatever, but he has no recollection of any of it. He actually only toured the first of the 3. He didn't tour Zipper Catches Skin or this one. I imagine he was just in pretty rough shape at this point. Like I said, this is, Bob Ezrin did return to produce this record, and it shows. I think it's the most interesting of the 3. It's definitely, conceptual, I guess as much as it can be, and it's pretty weird, but it's a really, really fun listen. Like I say, I think of the 3, it's the best one. Dick Wagner also on guitar back on this record. This was the last record that he made for Warner Brothers. I'm assuming whatever contract he had ended with this one, and of course, he wasn't selling records, and he wasn't in any shape to promote or tour them. So, I imagine it was just done after that. And then after this record, like I said, this is the last of the Blackout records. And after this, Alice would pretty much disappear for about 3 years. And in that time, he would get himself clean again. He would get himself healthy again. And in 1986, he'd come back with, the standard mid-70s Alice Cooper character, albeit sober this time. And he would come back with Constrictor and go back to a more traditional Alice Cooper, as we knew and loved him from the 70s, type of character, as opposed to what he had become with these 3 albums. But this one's very, very, very interesting. He had a long relationship with Salvador Dali dating back to the 70s, when they did some, like artistic work together or whatever. And very weird and kind of creepy record, but very interesting. Just starts right off, even with just the whole Dada, whatever at the beginning. It's just like kind of a weird record. But again, I can't think of any particular songs or whatever right offhand, and I can't read the back of this record. Eyes are old. But yeah, but very, very interesting listen, and again, with Bob Ezrin back on board, there's generally some sort of like underlying concept or theme that goes through. And again, this was just a lot of this very inspired by, his time and relationship with Salvador Dali. So, check that out. The last of the Blackout albums. After this, he would go back to being normal Alice Cooper eventually. But again, a very interesting period that I don't think gets enough attention. And, I think people should revisit it. Is it going to blow your mind like Love It to Death or School's Out or Welcome to My Nightmare? Maybe not. It's not as commercially viable as those records, but definitely very, very interesting. And I think albums that, this one and the other two albums that people should hear. So check it out. Dada, in my opinion, the most interesting of the 3 Blackout albums. And that's all I've got for you this time. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified when we put out new content. I've got the rest of my Lost Classic series where we talk about albums that either didn't sell well in the beginning or have kind of have been forgotten over time or swept under the rug. Albums that I think everyone should hear. And I've also got a live album series out there where we talk about live albums from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond. So check that out. There is my unboxing series where we open up new releases, reissues, new albums, box sets. Sometimes they're CDs, sometimes they're records, just depends. I've got some live footage from some different concerts and festivals over the last few years, and I've even got a couple of documentary style films that I did for school. One is about a local amateur disc golfer friend of mine, and the other is about the fire that took away our home, where we will hopefully be back in by the end of this year. Fingers crossed. So like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.